"You're not my real dad." Jason didn't shout it. He didn't stutter. He said it plain, casual, like he was noting the weather, like he was reminding me of a fact everyone knew except me. The words landed with the sharpness of glass underfoot. I smiled anyway, the kind of smile you learn to put on when your chest caves in but you don't want anyone to notice. I had practiced smiling for years. Smiles that covered exhaustion after 12-hour shifts. Smiles that reassured Linda when money was tight, even as I moved numbers from one account to another in the middle of the night. Smiles that told the children they were safe, even when I wasn't sure I was. I married Linda because I loved her, but love is a fragile word, it doesn't survive on air. I built it into something heavier, something that carried weight. That weight was Jason and Hannah, her children from a man who had vanished like smoke, a man who only existed in stories told with sighs and in photos buried at the bottom of drawers. I told myself I could be enough, that presence and labor could replace absence and blood. I moved into their house in the suburbs of Dallas. A house that wasn't mine, not at first. The walls carried the memory of another man, another life. His things were gone, but the shape of him still lingered. I hung my shirts in closets where his had once been. I placed my toothbrush beside Linda's, knowing another had stood there before me. I slipped into the rhythm of lives already in progress. I paid for everything. School fees, uniforms, soccer cleats for Jason, piano lessons for Hannah. Trips to Disney, braces, birthday parties with cakes so large no one finished them. I signed my name on permission slips, co-signed for loans, bought cars when the time came. I worked weekends, worked overtime, dragged myself home past midnight, only to rise again at dawn. And still I showed up. I stood in the cold at Jason's games, cheering until my throat burned, even when he rolled his eyes at me. I sat through Hannah's recitals, applauding even when her fingers slipped, even when she refused to look at me. I was there always, not because I had to, but because I had chosen to, because I believed. For years I believed we were a family. I believed the small acknowledgments, the quick thanks, the distracted hugs, the rare moments of softness, meant something solid. That if I just kept giving, if I just kept showing up, one day they would see me not as Linda's husband, not as a placeholder, but as their father. But then their biological father came back. He didn't return with shame. He didn't creep in. He strode back into town like he had a right, like he had never missed a birthday, never failed to pay support, never left Linda to raise 2 children alone. The air changed when he appeared. Jason's eyes lit up. Hannah's laughter sounded different, brighter. They leaned toward him, hungry for his approval, starving for his attention. And suddenly I was measured against him. Jason's comments turned sharp. Dad wouldn't do it that way. Hannah's introductions grew cold. At church, at school events, she would say, "This is my mom's husband," stripping me down to a title that carried no love, no respect, just bureaucracy. I was no longer dad, I was paperwork. Linda excused it all. "They just miss him," she'd whisper, as if longing excused cruelty. "They're adjusting." She told me to be patient, told me it was temporary, told me blood has a pull that can't be fought. But what about the blood I had given? The nights I had worked myself sick to pay for their futures? The years I had carved out of my life to give them stability? What was that worth if not the same as blood? I kept smiling. I kept paying. I kept believing. And then Jason leaned across the dinner table one night, smirk tugging at his mouth, and said, "You know you're just a guest here, right? Temporary. Temporary." I looked at the table I had bought, the roof over our heads that my overtime had secured, the food steaming on the plates that my paycheck had purchased. And I wondered, for the first time, if everything I had given was nothing more than rent for a place in their lives. I kept silent, but inside me something shifted. I had tolerated Jason's sneers, Hannah's cold introductions, and Linda's endless excuses. I had told myself patience was love, and love could bear anything. But there comes a night when even the strongest walls collapse, not because of one great blow, but because of every small crack ignored for too long. It was late, past midnight, when I heard it, Jason's voice carrying through the thin walls of our Dallas house, dripping with arrogance. He wasn't talking to me. He was talking to his friends on a headset, laughing between the static. He's just a temporary guest, Jason bragged. Not even my real dad. Just some guy my mom married to pay the bills. His friends laughed with him. I could hear their mocking echoes spilling into my living room, into my marriage, into my years of sacrifice. I sat in the dark, the glow of the television long since gone, my glass of bourbon warm in my hand. The words repeated in my head. Temporary guest. Not father. Not even stepfather. Just a man renting space in the ruins of another man's family. The next morning, Hannah added the final blow. We were in the driveway, neighbors walking by, when she smiled politely and gestured toward me. "This is my mom's husband," she said to a classmate, her voice bright, rehearsed. Not my stepdad. Not my father. Just a legal attachment to her mother, no more personal than a name on a mortgage. I stood there holding the groceries, her words heavier than the bags cutting into my hands. She turned and walked inside as if nothing had happened. Later that evening, when Linda came home, I told her what I'd heard, what Hannah had said. She sighed, as though I were a child whining about something trivial. "They're just kids," she said. "They're adjusting. Don't take it personally. You know they love you in their own way." Love. In their own way. That phrase hung between us like rot. A week passed and then came the demand. Jason and Hannah cornered me in the living room, standing like prosecutors, their eyes sharp with borrowed courage. "You should apologize to Dad," Jason said. I blinked, stunned. "Apologize? For what?" "For taking his place," Hannah snapped. Her voice carried no hesitation, no guilt. "You married Mom and acted like you were our father, but you're not. You should say sorry to him, to us too." I looked at their faces, the faces I had fed, clothed, carried through sickness, driven to practice, stayed up late for, written checks for. Faces that bore none of my blood but had drained my veins dry all the same. And I realized I was finished. I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I didn't waste one more breath trying to defend my worth to children who had already written me out of their story. Instead, I acted. That night, while they slept, I walked room to room in the house I had paid for. I gathered everything my money had ever provided, the games, the clothes, the gadgets, the trinkets from vacations. I piled them in the living room like evidence. The soccer cleats I had bought, the piano sheet music, the phones and tablets. I took what could be carried, and what couldn't, I marked with sticky notes. I stacked unpaid bills on the kitchen table. Electricity, internet, credit card statements, all with my name at the bottom. All the invisible pillars holding their world together. I left them there like a mirror they could no longer avoid. When I was done, the house looked different. Stripped bare. Hollow. It no longer resembled a home. It resembled the truth. A shell propped up by one man's labor. A man they refused to acknowledge. I slept little that night, but it was not the restless sleep of despair. It was clarity. Cold, merciless clarity. The next morning, I walked out the door with my suitcase. Linda woke to the sound of it rolling down the hallway. She stumbled out, confusion in her eyes. "Where are you going?" she asked. I looked at her, the woman I had married, the woman who had allowed her children to spit on me for years without consequence. "If I'm not part of this family," I said, my voice steady, "then I have no responsibility here, not to you, not to them." Her mouth opened, but no words came. Behind her, Jason and Hannah stood silent, their faces pale with shock. They didn't laugh. They didn't smirk. They just watched me leave. The door closed behind me with the finality of a coffin lid. For years, I had built a life for them, and in one night, I tore it back down. I abandoned the house, abandoned the bills, abandoned the role they had mocked. For the first time in years, I belonged only to myself. But as I walked into the dawn, suitcase in hand, I knew the silence would not last. The weight of my absence would crush them, and soon enough they would call. I left them to their silence, to their unpaid bills, to the hollow house that had never truly been mine. For years I had carried them like a mule, bending my back until the bones cracked, only to be told I was nothing but a guest. So I gave them what they wanted. I walked away. First, they didn't believe it. Linda called the next morning, her voice sharp with anger, demanding to know when I would return. I let it ring. She sent messages, paragraphs full of excuses, full of empty promises about how the kids didn't mean it, how they were just confused. I deleted them without opening. Then came the practical unraveling. Within a week, the electricity bill went unpaid. The cable cut off soon after. Groceries ran thin. Jason's soccer practices were canceled when the fees weren't met. Hannah's piano lessons ended abruptly, her teacher's texts unanswered. The world I had built for them piece by piece began to collapse. Not because it was weak, but because I was no longer there to hold it upright. The calls began quietly. Jason first. His voice cracked with teenage bravado, trying to sound tough, but there was a tremor beneath it. Look, I didn't mean it like that. You know, I was just joking with my friends. You don't have to take it so seriously. I said nothing. Silence is sharper than anger. It cuts deeper. Hannah followed days later. She didn't call. She wrote long messages late at night, paragraphs of apology typed through tears, words about how she hadn't realized how much I did, how she was sorry for calling me Mom's husband. She begged me to come to her next recital, said she couldn't play if I wasn't there. I read every word. Then I set the phone down, screen glowing in the dark, and went back to sleep. Linda tried to stitch it together with desperation. She picked up extra shifts, came home hollow-eyed, tried to cover what I had always carried. But the numbers didn't add up. The house was too big, the debts too wide, the children too accustomed to comfort. Without me, she was only a woman standing in the ruins of her choices. And yet, she still defended them. They're just kids, she said in her voicemails, her voice shaking. They didn't understand what they were saying. Please don't punish them for words. But words are not harmless. Words are knives. And once spoken, they cut too deep to pretend they were never there. Weeks passed, and the tone shifted. The anger drained from their voices, replaced by pleading. Jason begged, "Please, I can't miss another practice. The coach says I'll be benched. Just help me out this once." Hannah cried, "I didn't mean it. I swear I didn't mean it. I need you." Even Linda lowered her pride. "We can't do this without you. I see that now. Please just come home." But I didn't move. Because here was the truth. It wasn't about money. It was never about money. It was about respect. And respect had been denied to me, spat in my face in the very house I had built. To return now, to pick up the pieces, would be to teach them that my worth was negotiable, that I would crawl back no matter how deep they cut me. And I would not. I remember one night, weeks after I'd gone, when the phone rang at 2 in the morning. Jason's number lit the screen. I answered, not with softness, but with silence. His voice was ragged, frantic. "They're shutting off the water tomorrow. Mom's crying. Hannah's freaking out. Please, please just help us this once. I'll do anything. I'll never say it again." I listened. Every word was desperation. Every word was proof of what I had always known. They had taken me for granted until the ground gave way. I hung up. The weight of his sobs echoed in my ears, but I did not call back. Because this was not cruelty, it was justice. They had asked for a world without me, and now they were living in it. And still, the calls kept coming. Linda's voice grew hoarse, Hannah's messages longer, Jason's bravado gone. Each plea was sharper than the last, cutting into the silence of my new life. But I did not return. I had walked away. And once you walk away from a fire that's been burning you alive, you don't go back into the flames. I left them to their choices. I left them to their father, the man they had chosen in words and in loyalty. But he did not come. He did not save them. He had vanished, as he always had, leaving them to choke on the ashes of their devotion. So they turned back to me, and I let them. I let them feel every ounce of absence, every missing dollar, every unpaid bill, every canceled dream. Because sometimes the only way to teach respect is through loss. And they had lost me. The phone never stopped ringing. At first, I would glance at the screen, feel the familiar ache stir in my chest, then set it aside. But with every passing day, the calls multiplied. Jason, Hannah, Linda, even unknown numbers I knew belonged to borrowed phones. My silence became a wall, and they kept hurling themselves against it, bruising themselves on the truth they had once declared, that I was nothing to them. I remembered those words every time the screen lit up. You're not our real dad. You're just a temporary guest. You should apologize to our father. They thought words were reversible, like a bad grade or a forgotten chore. They thought an apology, a promise, a tear could pull back what had already been carved in stone. But some things, once spoken, cannot be undone. Jason's messages grew frantic. I didn't mean it like that. I was just messing around. Please just help me get through this semester. I'll do better. I'll call you Dad if that's what you want. But respect offered in desperation is no respect at all. It's currency, counterfeit, and worthless. Hannah's tone was softer. She wrote late at night, her words spilling across the screen like confessions. I hate myself for what I said. I didn't understand how much you did for us. I was stupid. Please come to my recital. I can't play if I know you're not there. But her music had been paid for with my money. Her piano had been tuned with my labor. And now that the keys fell silent, she wanted me back not because she saw me as her father, but because she missed the comfort I had provided. Linda's pleas were different. She didn't apologize, she justified. They're kids. They don't understand. Don't throw away years of family over a few cruel words. Please, we need you. I need you. Need, not love, not respect, not even want. Just need, like a drowning person needs air, like a debtor needs a loan. I had become nothing more than a resource. I thought of all the years I had poured myself dry for them. The endless overtime, the quiet sacrifices, the way I had erased my own needs so theirs could shine. And in return, they had erased me. So I erased them. When the phone rang, I let it buzz until it fell silent. When letters came to my new address, handwritten, trembling with desperation, I left them unopened, stacked neatly in a drawer I never touched. When Linda herself showed up at my door one night, eyes hollow, makeup streaked with tears, I did not let her in. Please, she whispered through the wood, her voice breaking. We can't do this without you. They're falling apart. I'm falling apart. Don't abandon us like this. Her words hit me like stones against a locked gate. But I did not open. Because I remembered all the nights I had begged for her to stand up for me, all the times I had asked her to demand respect from her children, all the years she had chosen silence. She had abandoned me long before I abandoned them. Inside my apartment, the silence was heavy, but it was mine. For the first time in years, I slept without listening for slammed doors, without waiting for muttered insults drifting from down the hall, without bracing myself for indifference disguised as teenage defiance. The quiet was cruel, but it was honest. Weeks turned to months. Their lives unraveled faster than even I expected. Jason dropped from his soccer team when the fees remained unpaid. Hannah withdrew from her lessons, humiliated when her teacher demanded overdue balances. Linda sold furniture to cover utilities, her once pristine house stripped to its bones. Neighbors whispered. Friends drifted away. The facade of a stable family dissolved without the invisible scaffolding of my labor. And still they called. One night, Jason left a voicemail, his voice breaking in a way I had never heard. You win, okay? You win. I'm nothing without you. I don't care if you don't want to be my dad. Just, please help us. Please. I deleted it. Because it was never about winning. It was about surviving. It was about dignity. The truth haunted me more than their pleas. If I went back, if I gave them even one more dollar, one more chance, then every word they had thrown at me would mean nothing. They would learn that betrayal has no consequence, that loyalty can be faked, that love can be mocked and still rewarded. And I refused to teach them that. So when the phone rang again, I looked at the screen, let it buzz, and set it aside. I sat in the dim light of my apartment, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound, and I let the silence settle over me like armor. For me, it was over. There was no way back. Because words cannot be unsaid. Because betrayal, once revealed, cannot be covered with apologies. Because a man who has been told he is nothing has only one choice: to live as though he believes it. And so I did. Jason, Hannah, and Linda remained behind, tangled in the ruins of their own choices. They had wanted a father who would never abandon them. Instead, they chose a ghost. And ghosts do not pay bills. Ghosts do not raise children. Ghosts do not save you when the world collapses. They chose him, and I chose myself. The years of sacrifice were ashes now. The family I thought I had built was nothing but a mirage. But in walking away, in refusing to bend one more time, I had reclaimed the only thing that mattered: my dignity. They could beg. They could rage. They could cry. But the door would remain shut, the phone unanswered, the silence unbroken. Because I had finally learned the truth. Love without respect is slavery. And I was no one's slave. So tell me, was I wrong? Was I cruel to abandon them when they needed me most, after they had cast me aside? Or was I right to let them choke on the weight of their own words, to finally demand the respect that should have been mine all along? What would you have done?